oh my God, can I spend $2,000 on this coaching program? But you spent $2,000 on something last year that you're not currently still using. It might not have been all at once. It might have been $500 there, $500 there, $750 here, and $250 there, right? What's up, family? Thank you for tuning in to the Dream Nation podcast. My name is Casanova. I'll be your host, and I'm excited to be bringing to you entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and trailblazers from around the world. Stay locked in with us because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life.
What I keep hearing is this common theme of your ability to take on something you have no idea what it's about, how to do it, yet you find a way to succeed at it. What's that about, Casanova? I mean, you told me you didn't know anything about digital marketing. You had to come down there. You did great. You didn't know about real estate, and you get in, and within a short period of time, what is your frame? We talked about this before we hopped on, like framework. Like, what is your way of thinking that allows you to be able to quickly learn and do? I mean, what is this about? Because I keep hearing this as a common theme as we're talking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, if anybody goes back and they looks at my journey, I mean, it didn't just start with these two things. I sold cars for 6 months. I got car salesman a month, 2 months in a row before I even got into digital marketing. I was out of 27 sales reps and I knew nothing. Keep in mind, my parents, my mom, grandma never owned house, car, business, nothing.
Yeah.
So for me, again, I was always searching I guess it stems back from when I was a young boy. And I remember my first favorite show ever growing up was VH1's The Fabulous Life of. I don't know if you ever
remember
seen
that.
it.
Oh yeah, I remember it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was like their version of MTV Cribs. And I remember him showing like Richard Branson, and he had Virgin Island and people with big yachts and all these other things. And keep in mind, until I was about 13 years old, I never even had my own bedroom. So when we were living in Chicago, my parents would always my mom and grandma would always get a 2-bedroom apartment, and then they would put my bed in the front room. Right. So basically I always had the living room, but when people come in, that's where my bed was, 2 TV, whatever. So for me, again, it was always like my mom was always working, trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, as she would say. Right. And my grandma we were very close, but besides the love connection and her always believing in me, there was never a lot of like, hey, do you want to be this when you grow up? Do you want to be that? So for me, I think I just always had excitement of the unknown. Right. So if I would have been exposed to you being a doctor and you haven't, because people would always tell me when I was younger, and I'm sure somebody can relate to this, where people were like, man, if you keep your head on right, you could be anything that you want to be in this world. Yeah. Well, what's the problem with that? If you're not exposed to anything, how do you know what you want to be?
Yeah.
And it's like, but I'm seeing all of these other things, but I can't talk to anybody to say, how did you become a doctor? Wow. How did you become a lawyer? How did you become whatever? So it's just on me to try to figure it out. And so it was a ton of trial and error. And when you ask, how have I been able to get in and actually do what I want to do? I think in the beginning, I always start with the end in mind. Right. And so I'm always thinking a long term. Here's something that I developed early on, because people would be like, you got to love the journey, right? You got to love it. And I'm like, to be honest, most people don't love the journey. Yes, you got to embrace it, because ebbs and flows, wins and losses comes with being bosses. That's at the end of the day. That's the truth. But you also got to understand that you don't have to love the journey, but you have to be married to the destination, right? You do not have to love the journey. When somebody decides they're going to become a bodybuilder, they do not love that they have to cut out carbs for 3 weeks or a month and a half or however long you got to do it. They do not love the fact that they got to get up every single morning at 4 a.m. and be back at the gym at 10 p.m. after they've already worked a 12-hour shift. Some people are working for $10 an hour, but again, they're married to the destination. So thinking with the end in mind is the first thing that I'm looking at. I'm always looking at, yes, what's the worst that could happen? But more importantly, what's the best that could happen? Because in life, understand that you're always going to, have to invest. Whether that means that you're going to invest your time or you're going to invest your money, right? You're going to have to invest. And energy comes with that. So make sure that you understand that up front. But then the other thing is, you have to ask yourself that even if I fail, if all goes wrong, what's the worst that could happen? And if that worst happens, can I bounce back from it? Very rarely is the worst that could happen death, right? Like it's not, unless you're talking about I'm about to go bungee jump. I mean, then you guess. But for most
Which
things,
is why I don't bungee jump, by the way. But anyway.
right, we stay on solid surfaces all the
Yes, man.
time.
Yes.
But outside of that, if you're talking about starting a business, if you're talking about being vulnerable with your significant other, with your spouse, right? If you're talking about showing your kids affection or whatever it is, you're talking about investing in the stocks or real estate, what's the worst that could happen? And if that worst happens, can you bounce back from it? 99% of the time, that answer is yes. Now, your pride might be hurt. That ego might be hurt. Your bank account might even be hurt. But at the end of the day, you have to think about what is the risk that I take by not trying it, because there's somebody that's always watching me, right? And that's for me. You talked about me being a family man. And yes, and I'll tell you, people ask me why I go so hard in showing my family, because yes, I mean, I've been able to build a life by my design now, and it's been amazing. But I'll tell you, there's times, and I learned this even from Jack Canfield, where he was talking about if there's anything that you're not very comfortable with in life right now, you have to go back between the ages of 3 years old and 12 years old, because most likely there's a trauma that happened to you. For every single one of us, there's some type of a trauma, and that trauma developed the story that you tell yourself every single day now, which gives you that emotion. That emotion then funnels into that action that you take, and that action that you take turns into that result that you get, right? So we have to trump the story that we tell ourselves, and only when you go back and you say, hey, here is the story that I've been, or here is the trauma that I had that created that story. So there's a couple examples that I could give you. The first one is, especially in the Black or poverty-stricken community, one of the stories that we tell ourselves, right, is I never had it, so I'm never gonna give it. Right? So we never had that giver's gain mentality. Why? Is because nobody ever gave us anything. So we like, yo, when I get it, and that's the whole reason that we never had that abundant mindset, right? And we got to have it not only when it comes to money, but you got to have it when it comes to relationships. Relationships is the currency that really creates success. It's not the money. Because most of the time that money comes and goes. You can think, oh my God, can I spend $2,000 on this coaching program? But you spent $2,000 on something last year that you're not currently still using. It might not have been all at once. It might have been $500 there, $500 there, $750 here, and $250 there. Right? But at the end of the day, the relationships that you've built, if they're meaningful relationships, at the end of the day, no matter what, if your integrity was right, even if that business failed, all of the people who invested into you, you can turn around and flip it and say, hey, look, I know that this one didn't work out, but was my intentions correct? Because most of the time, the reason why people invested into you or your business was not about the end product. It was about you, and they believed in it, and they believed that you were going to help them get a solution. Whatever that solution was that was going to solve their problem. It didn't matter. If you go on Amazon right now, there's 10 different brands on any one type of product that you can buy. That's what you got to think about. So at the end of the day, what is the relationship? What is the story that you're building with that customer? Right? Because if they have that integrity into you, that's going to be everything. So to get back to it, I know I kind of went off.
Well, no. Hold on. Because I gotta, you should just, look, I need to say at the beginning of this interview, like, you need to pull out your pen and pad and take notes, because there's just so many life lessons in this. I'm going to choose one, and the one that just stuck out to me, which is relationships is the currency that creates success. And what I hear in that, Casanova, is that it's with success in anything.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
Because what we're talking about here is, yes, you may be successful in your career, and true success in that career is probably built around the relationships that you have. And if it's not sustainable, or if you didn't have the right integrity, or, you know what I'm saying, you may be experiencing success now. If it's not sustainable, it's probably because the relationships aren't there. But then I'm thinking about my success as a father, my success as a husband, my success in my faith, in my relationship with God.
Facts.
It's all based on relationship. And so how are you going to show up in your relationship? This was as I'm writing, by the way, I'm writing frenzy over here. Like, you right, as I'm taking notes, and you should be as well if you're watching this. and replay this. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, start with the end in mind. So many of this stuff is success principles that we will look at and be like, oh man, I need to apply this to my business. But like you said, if there's an area in your life that you're like, I'm not winning in this area, you can't neglect it. You need to look at it and apply these same principles, beginning with the end in mind. For me, I remember at one point, my wife and I, we ain't where we want to be.
Right.
Right? We're just going through the motions. So I'm thinking, how do I want this to look when it's all said and done? And when I say all said and done, not when I'm dead, but like, what does success look like in this area for me? How do I want it to look? And then build the relationship. This is just like mind blown there. You can't see me if you're listening to this, but I'm doing the mind blown kind of thing with my hands. But yeah, I mean, I love this parenthetical kind of, conversation along what we're talking about. But you're talking about, you get to the point to where you've applied these principles, you've been massively successful now in a short period of time with real estate.
Right. It was all about relationships. Absolutely.
And it was all about relationships.
Hey guys, thank you for sticking with me and watching this video. Now, if you've gotten any value out of this video, I want you to do me a favor. I need you to make sure that you hit that subscribe button and also turn on those bell notifications. What that's gonna do is it's gonna tell you whenever I drop more heat just like this video. And make sure that you hit that like button, because that's gonna let the YouTube gods know that more people need to be seeing this video. I appreciate you watching, and as a token of my appreciation, I dropped a couple more videos for you to take a look at in the meantime until I drop more heat. Remember, in the dream we trust, but you gotta take action. Otherwise, that dream that you have will only merely be a fantasy. I'll catch you on the next one.